So as part of this series of looking at harmful behaviours towards the children, particularly that are around coercive control, domestic abuse and alienating behaviours, the next one we're going to look at is exposing your child to harmful content. Now, this can be adult YouTube content, adult music, it can be films, things that are not age appropriate. So it's a difficult one because say your child is 8 and they take them to a 12. Personally, I don't think that's right. Legally, it's not going to get a great deal across the line unless it's part of a pattern. If, however, they are showing them sexual videos of a sexual nature, obviously that's much further down the legally you'd have way more leg to stand on with something like that. Now the problem that you've got is the difficulty in proving that, because you've only got your child's word for that. And whilst I'm not saying your child's lied, what I'm saying is in a court environment, you are bringing your child in as a witness that they've done that. And they might not be willing to. They might not be a willing witness, because in my experience, this is where keeping secrets starts to come in. So the child might come to you and you know, say, oh, I watched this sexy dance video today, or I watched this video today and they were doing this, and start showing you some, you know, inappropriate moves, for example, and you gently sort of inquire, all right, tell me a little bit more about that. That sounds interesting. And you start to think, oh my God, this sounds really, really worrying. You got a couple of choices. You can go back to your ex and say, hang on here, what are you watching them? Again, not that language. I have tools again. I have the BIF communicating tool that you could use where you go, this is what I want to say, this is what's better. But essentially you could say, they've been sharing with me that, you know, they've watched this, that and the other. I don't think that's appropriate for them. The problem that you've got with that is they will then go to the child and they won't stop, because they won't see it as being inappropriate. So there's two factors to this. Factor one is they probably just don't understand what's child appropriate. They don't like being told what to do and what not to do, so they're unlikely to stop. The other side of that is more insidious, which is if they're grooming the child to be more comfortable with sexualized behaviors, then creating secrets is kind of playing into their hands. So my advice, and again, this is just my advice, you've got to think about this. I'm just going to talk through why. My advice is to work with your child on this, is to talk through, do the NSPCC PANTS training, you know, talk to them about what is appropriate, what isn't appropriate, and ultimately explain why you might be concerned about them watching something like that. Not to be overly dramatic, not to remain very calm. This is not their fault, but just help them to understand why that's for adults and not for children. If you were to go to your other half, then your ex, sorry, and say, they can't be watching that, then they'll just say to the child, this is our secret. And that is such a dangerous road. Now, I'm not saying they're not doing that already. They might well be doing, but don't give them ammunition to do that even more. What you want is for your child to know that they can come to you with anything, because that's how you keep them safe. You don't rushing to tell the other parent not to do something that won't actually change them anyway. It's not going to keep your child safe, because it's going to put them in a more vulnerable position. So my advice, again, like I said, this isn't, you don't have to listen to this. I'm just telling you my advice, my child protection background, my years of doing this. Work with your child on this. Work with your child on what isn't appropriate. do the NSPCC pants training, you know, get books around boundaries, help your child to understand what they're ready for. Help, because this is about consent. Ultimately, being shown harmful content is about consent. It's about your child feeling that they can say, no, actually, I don't want to watch that. And getting them to self monitor on things like that is really powerful for them. Now, that's not to say that your ex won't put pressure on them or anything like that, but this is about them understanding, you know, that they have every right to say, no, I don't want to watch that, and understanding why they don't want to watch that. If the other parent then puts pressure on them, then that's teaching them that the other parent doesn't listen to them. So this is why the work with the children is so important, is because you're not going to change your ex's behaviour, but you are going to change your child's understanding of certain things, so that even if it doesn't change anything, it changes their perception of it. And getting a child to self monitor on things like that, even if they don't feel brave enough to say, actually, I don't want to watch that. Them knowing that other parent is putting them in that situation, whilst that's a tough lesson, it is still important for them to learn. So again, it's a really, really, really difficult one. In terms of court, obviously, if it is, you know, exposing them to pornographic material, something like that, or something, but real extreme violence, something that is well beyond what is age appropriate for that child, then you can present that as being harm under the welfare checklist. That you could present that as harm. You would want to present as, you know, what's the immediate impact on that child? You know, for example, if they've been watching violence, are they coming home and are they picking up knives and swinging them around and threatening you? Or, you know, that might be an extreme, but is there an immediate impact that has happened? What might be the midterm impact of that? How, if left unchecked without intervention, how might this progress? If this child is allowed to keep watching violence, what might happen? Again, you're not predicting the future, but you are showing that's your worry. Your worry is, if we don't stop this behavior now, this might happen. And then longer term, you know, they might commit crime, they might hurt someone, they might end up in prison, they might not understand what's real life and what isn't. So that would be my way of presenting it as harm, is what is immediately going on, what has been the immediate impact of this child experiencing this behavior, what is the you know, when they're like few years older, what's going to happen then? What if we carry on with this, they keep being exposed to stuff like this, what then might happen, and what's the long term? So in their adulthood, how might that look if nothing has happened? What message are we giving the child? So yeah, it's pretty tough stuff, I know, but I think it's really important that we approach this stuff. So again, drop any comments, share your experiences, and let me know.